Bueno, comenzamos. Muy buen día. Les doy la bienvenida al Instituto Matías Romero, a nuestros amigos que están en Facebook Live y a la gente aquí en el Instituto. Distinguished Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Poland, Marcin, Przydacz. Dear Ambassador of Poland in Mexico and dear friend, Maciel Gietara. Dear Ambassador also, dear friend, Ambassador of Mexico to Poland, Ambassador Juan Sandoval Mendiolea. Good morning. Dear friends of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Embassy of Poland in Mexico, the diplomatic corps in Mexico City. Friends all, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for us to welcome at the Matías Romero Institute, the Diplomatic Academy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, such a distinguished guest, the Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs of Poland. He is responsible for policies towards the Americas, Asia, and Eastern Europe. Mr. Undersecretary, we have, in recent past, we have been able to strengthen our academic cooperation. Last November 2021, we held a video conference with the director of the Polish Foreign Service to explore ways and means to strengthen our bilateral cooperation. As a result, we have published in our seasonal journal the view of the Polish Diplomatic Academy of the training of diplomats for the 21st century. All of you can find the journal outside the room. Also in November last year, in 2021, we held at this auditorium, the conference, the Visegrad Group's vision of the future of Europe, together with the embassies of Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic in Mexico. Also last March, the Embassy of Poland, in collaboration with the archives of the Warsaw Academy of Science and the Museum of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is located in this very building, we presented the exhibition, The Polish Children of Siberia, at the Hacienda Santa Rosa, Mexico, 1943-1947. Just a few years ago, in 2018, the Matías Romero Institute at the Polish Embassy in Mexico City, together, we embarked in an important bilingual academic project, the book Poland and Mexico Through History, a perspective from the Polish diplomacy, written by Professor Krzysztof Smolana. The book covers critical chapters in the bilateral relation, such as the coming of the Second World War. Relevance today emerges in multiple ways of our two countries, as well as the international community face dramatic challenges that we all are aware of. Both our countries, Mexico and Poland, do share system-based the view of a world based on a system of rules to deal peacefully with this current entanglement, as we will hear this morning from Viceminister of Foreign Affairs of Poland. So I want to underscore this cooperation between two countries, because we have been closer than ever in the recent months, working from the academic perspective, trying to include also the cultural component to our countries, which are two countries that share a number of values at the international level, at the multilateral level, at the UN. So it is really a pleasure to have the Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs of Poland. And sir, I'll give you the floor. And thank you very much again for being here. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Director, Ambassador, Excellencies, dear colleagues and dear friends. It's a great honor and privilege to be here today at the Matías Romero Institute, such a distinguished institute, very well known
place for its expertise, and among diplomats, experts all over the world, this institute is very well known. So I was asked by the director, together with the ambassador of Poland to Mexico and ambassador of Mexico to Poland, to deliver a couple of my observations, opinions about the challenges ahead of Polish diplomacy with regard to the next couple of months or years. As you know, we are living in a quite turbulent times, and given the fact that Poland, as a country right in the very heart, in the very center of Europe, bordering both Ukraine and Russia, has been witnessing those turbulent times, not since February 24th, but just to be honest, for the last couple of not only decades, but I dare to say that's even more, somehow about 400 years since the Russian imperialism was born, since the Tsar Peter the Great, who was moving forward Russian troops through the Catherine II, who took part in the partition of Poland. Then Poland and many other countries in the region were not only dependent on Russia, unfortunately lost our independence, and we became a part of the Russian Empire. Throughout the history, there were a lot of uprising, both of Poles, Lithuanians, Belarusians, Ukrainians, and many other nations against the authoritarian regime, first of Russia and then of Soviet Union. And finally, we got our independence, first just after the World War the First in 1918. That it didn't last for a long time, a bit more than 20 years. During the World War II, of course, we were attacked by Germany, and afterwards, because of the decision of Allied forces in Tehran and Yalta, Poland was a part of the sphere of influence of Russia. Ukraine, Belarus, and the Baltic states were not in existence at that time, became a part of Soviet Union. Why I'm saying this, telling you a bit of our history, but maybe it's not that we're very well known, just to show you that this part of Europe was never part of Russia. Someone who's, I don't know, looking into at the map of the 20th century, the Soviet Union could see only the Soviet Union with the capital in Moscow. But I can assure you that the Ukrainian nation, that the Belarusian nation, Lithuanian, Estonian, Latvian, and many others are completely different to Russians. They speak different language. They are culturally different. The mentality is different. The dedication to democracy, mostly because of the history and tradition, living in the one big kingdom, or the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which was based on the democratic rules since the 15th century. We were exposed together with Lithuanians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, and Jewish community, which was living at that time in Poland. We were living in one big peaceful country based on democratic rules. So there was the citizens who were electing the king. So that was a really democratic system. To the east of our borders, there was already a authoritarian regime of Tsarist Russia. So we've been struggling with Russian imperialism for quite a long time, several centennials. And unfortunately, it seems that this time, after collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, was another short period without Russian imperialism, or maybe Moscow was just preparing another phase of its operation. It all started in 2008 when Georgia was attacked. Then 2015, Crimea and Donbas, part of Ukraine, since that time it has been occupied by Russian forces. And another phase of this operation this year. What is the goal of the Russian foreign policy? It was quite clearly said by the day before yesterday by Minister of Defense of Russia, Sergei Shoigu, who said that we want to re-establish, recreate the Soviet Union, and then it will be okay for all of us. So it seems that the ultimate goal of Russian foreign policy is to recreate the empire, recreate the sphere of influence, recreate the colonial system of Central and Eastern Europe. Because many of you may think that the colonial system was established in the 19th century in Africa, or even before in Latin America, later in Asia. But I can assure you that in Central Europe there was also a colonial system where smaller countries were dominated by one big country. So once we allow superpowers to recreate its spheres of influence, we are all in danger. Not only Poland, not only Lithuania, not only Ukraine, but all those countries who were once already dominated by other superpowers. So in our opinion, the Russian invasion in Ukraine is the war not only about the sovereignty of Ukraine, not only about the integral territorial integrity of Ukraine. It's about the future of the world order, the world we are living in right now. I'm pretty sure that both of our countries has been profiting quite a lot from the world order, peaceful cohabitation and collaboration of countries globally, and to come back to the situation where only several superpowers decide about the future of the world is not the world we want to live in. It's not the world we want to go back. The world based on the principle of multilateralism, based on the international law and the strength of law, I think is the world which is good for all of us. We've managed to live in peaceful times since that kind of world order was established. So those who are trying to destroy it should be repelled, should be deterred. And that's why many of our democratic friends, democratic countries all over the world, not only Europe, not only our transatlantic partners, including Canada and the US, but several other countries, Asian partners, but also here in Latin America, has been supporting Ukraine in order to preserve, to keep the stability. Unfortunately, to keep the stability and peaceful, it doesn't. It brings some costs. Nothing is for free, and it seems that this cost has been paid mostly by the Ukrainian nation, which is struggling in the front line, which infrastructure is being destroyed every day, whose people, women, kids, men are being killed every day. But this is the price of Ukrainian side. But I'm pretty sure that it's not only Ukraine which is paying this price. Many of our countries, our societies has been also paying this price. Look at the energy prices, look at the inflation, look at the food prices and the possible food crisis which is ahead of us. This is all the cost which is being paid not only by Ukraine, not only by Poland, European Union states, but the entire free world, including Mexico, and we are pretty aware of this. But the question is whether we can preserve the world without any expenses, without any cost. And the other question is, what's the alternative? Of course, it's quite natural and obvious that nobody wants to pay higher prices for energy or food. But if that is the price to keep the stability and the peace, I think it's worth considering this. So my mission here in Mexico is to encourage the government of Mexico, but also to encourage the society, Mexican nation, to be even more active with regards to this. And what can we do? Of course, we need to cut off the oxygen for those imperialists in Moscow. And what is the oxygen? The oxygen is the money. To conduct or to start a war, every country needs some money. And Vladimir Putin, Mr. Shoigu, and many other Russian decision makers has been collecting this money since they came to power 20 years ago in order to prepare its war machine. The money which has been paid for energy, resources, for many other goods, mostly in Russia, was not spent on the new beautiful roads, highways, railways, or social benefits, schooling system. No, it was mostly spent on the military budget and on the war machine, which we are observing right now in the eastern part of Ukraine. So in order to stop this war, what we should do is to exert pressure and to exert pressure on Moscow and to cut off the oxygen. And that's what basically European Union has been doing since February 24th. And one may say that, of course, sanctions are maybe not the best term, maybe it's not the best option. But again, what's the alternative? Should we do the business as usual with Russia, giving them money, having in mind that they are spending this money on rockets, missiles, tanks, armored vehicles to kill innocent civilian people all around the sovereign state of Ukraine? Or maybe should we stop this business? We can call it sanctions. Someone can call it just a less intensive business cooperation. We've, as the EU, 27 member states, managed to keep the unity and decided about 7 packages of sanctions, but it is up to the sovereign countries all over the world, including Latin America, including Mexico, one of the most important actors, not only regionally, but globally, to think about it, whether it is really worth to continue any kind of business collaboration with Russia, having in mind what this money is being spent on. And the second thing, and the second challenge, second job to be done, second item on our agenda is, of course, to support the victim. Both of our countries are based on the same values, on the same philosophy, culture, tradition, mainly based on the Christianity, but not only. One may say that simply on the observation of human rights, I think it is quite natural for all of us that we should stand on the side of the victim, not the aggressor. And it's quite obvious that there is one victim and one aggressor. And the victim is Ukraine, the country which, just like Poland 20 years ago, decided to somehow go west. It was not the West, NATO, EU, expanding, as you may see in the Russian disinformation channels. It was the Ukrainian nation, mostly the younger generation at the beginning, but now I think 95% who may feel the difference between being in the sphere of influence of Russia and being part of the collective West. And the example of Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Lithuania, any country of Central Europe is a good example for them, because they know what was the situation there, or in my country 30 years ago, and what has changed. We've managed to increase the GDP of our economy 4 times since we left the sphere of influence of Russia, being a member of the EU and being a member of other Euro-Atlantic structures. So nobody should be surprised that the Ukrainians, they just want to follow this example, living in a better world. And I think they have right to do so. It's their own country, and it's their own, it's the future of their own country. So once we let the superpowers to decide about the fate of and the foreign policy principles of a country like Ukraine, why the other superpower should not decide about the future and fate of other country in other part of the world? This is not the future we want to live in. That's why Poland has decided to actively support Ukraine, because, as I said, there are victims, but because they are also defending the security not only of Europe, but the global order, which is profitable, I think, for all of our countries. That's why we've decided to actively support them financially, economically. Their economy has been suffering a lot. I don't know whether you were aware of what has been happening there, but the railways are being bombed every day, bridges, highways, civilian infrastructure, shopping malls. It's impossible to run economy in such a difficult situation. That's why so many Ukrainians, actually millions of them, fled the country, to flee the country as refugees. More than 5 million of them crossed the Polish-Ukrainian border and stayed in Poland. Many other millions of Ukrainians crossed the borders with other countries neighboring Ukraine. But again, some of them are already in Poland because of their relatives, because of their friends, because of the already accommodation that they are provided with in Poland. So as for now, at least 3 million Ukrainian refugees are staying in Poland, which is of course also a challenge for all of us. But we believe that this is the natural step for us to take. When you see people suffering, it's quite obvious that the good people are helping them. And I can tell you that we've counted those refugees, and it seems that 94% of refugees are women with kids under 18. Since men are not allowed to cross the border, mostly are fighting on the front line. So the refugees are mostly women with children. And that is another challenge already domestically, how to accommodate such a big number of people, mostly mothers with their small kids, young kids. So the childcare system, schooling system, that is what we are doing. Hopefully, one day with a little help from the international organizations, including United Nations and the European Union. Poland is still waiting for their support to this. But of course, globally, this situation creates a lot of tensions and problems. Inflation, which is deeply founded or rooted in the war, but not only, of course, also the post-pandemic recovery. We do hope that within the next months we will somehow find a way how to fight successfully inflation. The same with energy prices. But I can assure you that there is a decision at the EU level, who was the biggest consumer of Russian energy resources, not to continue this collaboration. Having in mind this, what I said at the beginning, that this money is spent on the military budget, against which, again, we as EU and NATO need to spend even more money to defend ourselves vis-a-vis this Russian aggressive policy. But there is another very important challenge ahead of us, which is the food security. Both of our countries are big producers of food, but we do not offer to our consumers 100% of that what they need. For example, the grain, which is very important to keep the food stability, especially in the global south, in Africa, in Asia, but partially also here in Latin America. Ukraine was one of the biggest exporters of grain, just like Russia. And Ukraine, I've been many times to Ukraine since the outbreak of this invasion. They are really willing to export this grain. More than 20 million tons of grain is in the silos of Ukraine near Odessa, but they don't have possibility to export it because of the occupation of their ports. The ports are being occupied by Russia. Mariupol, you've probably seen those pictures from Mariupol, is completely destroyed. That is under control of Russia. Another port, Berdyansk, again, the only port, I'm not mentioning Crimea, which was also according to the international regulations part of Ukraine. There were also ports, but they are closed for Ukrainian grain. The only port which is still controlled by Ukraine is Odessa. But the problem is that the Black Sea is being blocked by Russian fleet. So it is not possible for Ukrainian businessmen to export this grain, although they want to do it. So that's why they've approached us, Poland and Romania, as neighboring countries, to help them in order to export this grain by land, by railways, trucks, to Polish or Romanian ports. And that's what we are doing, not for business purposes. We are doing this in order to help the global south to avoid any kind of scenario of tensions, because we are pretty aware of the fact that to have a bread every day, it's absolutely minimum needs of every human being. So that's what we are doing. We opened new crossing points at the border. We've opened new options at the Polish ports. But let's face the truth, it's not that easy suddenly within weeks or months to export such a big quantity of grain. That's why we welcome very much the initiative of the United Nations and the Secretary General Guterres to start kind of diplomatic efforts, diplomatic negotiations with Russia in order to unblock Odessa port to let Ukraine to export the grain. Final agreement was signed in Turkey a couple of days ago. And what happened next? The Russian troops attacked Odessa, started to bomb it, started to destroy the ports. And that shows also the attitude of Russian diplomatic forces, the Russian government. One day they sign an agreement on the umbrella of the United Nations to unblock ports, and the next day they attack it. And that could be also the lesson for all those who are pushing the international community to start negotiations with Russia to find a diplomatic solution for this war. I'm afraid that it's not easy to find a diplomatic solution with the side which is signing one day an agreement and the next day breaking it already through its attack. You are young diplomats and experts. Maybe you feel it's a bit better than I do, but with our experience of dealing with Russia, that wouldn't be easy. And having in mind also what Mr. President Putin said at the very beginning of this war, that Ukraine has no right to exist, and the Ukraine has no Ukrainian nation. It's just a Russian nation, which is absolutely false, but that's what he said. So where is the room for maneuver for Ukrainian state if the aggressor says that they don't have a right to exist, that they should be destroyed? And basically that's what Russian troops are doing in the southern and eastern part of Ukraine, annihilating elites of this country, capturing kids, taking them from families and sending deep to Russia in order to already grew them up in Russian culture, Russian language. So I can somehow understand President Zelensky and the Ukrainian nation that they don't see any room for maneuver just to defend themselves. But with regard to the food security, we will continue our efforts as Poland, together with our neighbors, also Lithuania, Romania, in order to export as much grain as possible. Hopefully, this agreement negotiated by the UN will somehow get into power and will work. But as for now, it's not very much productive. And on a final note, what may happen in the next weeks or months, I can assure you that Ukrainians are very much motivated and determined to defend their territorial integrity and their right to exist. And the European Union, European states, our transatlantic partners are very much motivated to continue this support to this country. So I do not have a simple answer when the war will be over. I can only assure you that there will be no concessions as for now. And those who are trying to exert pressure on Zelensky and on Ukrainian side should rather exert this pressure on the aggressor, not on the victim. So that's how it is. I think that there is also a lot of potential and room for the Latin American countries, including Mexico, to take a even more active stance. We welcome very much the initiative of the Mexican government and the level of the United Nations. There was a resolution proposed by Mexican government. It was very much welcome, finally supported by the vast majority of the United Nations members. So it was a success story of the Mexican diplomacy. But it's been already a while since that initiative. So together with Mr. Ambassador at the Minister of Foreign Affairs down here in Mexico City, we will work further and stronger to find another options. What can we do together? And that's another reason of on my visit to learn a bit of your perspective, to share our perspective, but also to encourage both of our countries to work closely and together in order to find any kind of possible solution of this difficult situation. Thank you very much. I'll be, of course, ready for taking any questions, whatever you want. Once again, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Undersecretary, for this, the viewpoint of your country related to the international crisis that we all recognize and are following the tremendous effect by the breaching of international law, the humanitarian effects, and the way that this conflict is moving different other side effects worldwide. So thank you. And I think here the audience will be eager to have some questions for the Undersecretary in connection with what he has already said, and probably also a note on the relationship between Mexico and Poland. If you want some Anybody? No?
Everything is quite clear.
Quite clear. Bruno, please, concrete questions, please, to the undersecretary.
Find not only Latin America but throughout other countries, the world, other regions. What is so far your estimation about encouraging other countries to join the positions such as the Polish law?
There's a mic there.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is a big challenge, to be honest. I'm pretty sure that your governments in Latin America are carefully analyzing the situation and carefully taking into consideration all pros and cons, which not only which side should they take, but what should they do, but even more carefully they are analyzing the attitude of the public opinion in those countries. As every democratic country, Poland, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, we need to follow the expectations of our society. We are just the representatives of the political will of our people. So I'm pretty aware of the fact that quite a significant part of Latin America population has a different understanding of this. That's why I believe my job or our work should start from the very foundation of this, not only encouraging the government, but also explaining and telling to the people what is the reality, what are the facts. We should not expect that ordinary Mexican, Brazilians, Argentinians are experts on the history of Ukraine, Poland, Russia. Sometimes they just, see a bit of this iceberg, just a part. So our job and your, I think, job, our experts, diplomats, politicians, journalists, is to explain a bit. I mean, to show the broader picture of this. And this is what I'm doing right now. So it's a long journey ahead of us. It won't happen next day. We need to step by step continue our efforts. And what's more, I didn't mention this during my speech, but what is our another task is to fight the disinformation. There is a lot of disinformation spread all around, especially global south, based on the diplomatic media presence of the aggressor since the Cold War. We are fully aware of this. Poland was not very much represented because we were dominated by Moscow at that time. So we need to rebuild our presence here, a diplomatic presence, political presence, economic presence, but also in the media. So there is a great responsibility for media to actually analyze properly the situation and provide public opinion with an accurate information, and then we can expect from the public opinion to support our policy and our decision. Without this, of course, it would be very much difficult for every democratic state. But the democracy, of course, is based on the political will expressed by the public opinion. But there is also a need of a leadership. So there are some expectations towards the government, decision makers, to take the path and to show the way and to somehow lead the people of their own country to take the right decision. Because again, we should not expect that people are experts on foreign policy. It's us who are experts on this, and we should see this picture, as I said, in a broader context, and we should somehow foresee what may happen within the next years if we allow Russia to destroy the global order today, then tomorrow we will wake up in a completely different situation, which will not be profitable for both of us. So that's the task for also for decision makers, politicians, and diplomats.
Thank you for that. One, another question here.
How did these crises play on internal politics?
Could you please repeat?
How these crises play
Into what?
Into the President Zelensky's
Internally, domestically.
On specifically international and internal politics.
Of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Okay.
how is this crisis
Okay.
okay.
I think I partly answered to your questions. What could be the difference of this war? By the way, I do not call it a crisis because there are no, it's not a crisis. It's an invasion. One country invaded another country. It's not a somehow crisis somewhere in the Eastern Europe. I don't know, war in Ukraine. Come on, there is one aggressor and one victim. I think nobody. You know, in 1939, when Poland was attacked by Nazi Germany, nobody said that there is a crisis in Central Europe. It was the World War II, outbreak of World War II, and the attack of Germany, Nazi Germany, on Poland. So let's be a bit more precise. With regard to the domestic politics of Ukraine, of course, it's absolutely dominated by this war, by the invasion. But I can assure you. Again, following what I said just before, that Mr. Zelensky is also doing what he's expected to do by his public opinion. You can go to Kiev, Kharkiv, Lviv, wherever in Ukraine, and ask ordinary people what should be done, and they will answer, we need to continue our defense. We need to defend our countries. Otherwise, they will all kill us. They will all finally come here and take our kids, women, and men will be killed. So he has absolutely more than 95% of support for what he is doing, and that's another factor why we shouldn't expect that Ukraine will make any concessions. The Ukrainian nation absolutely is not ready to make any concession, and why should they be ready to make any concessions on Russia? Because only because of the fact that they were attacked, they should give part of their land, their own homeland, their own countries. Which country, which nation would allow this scenario to happen? Would Mexico allow someone to take part of your territory? I don't think so. And that's the case of Ukraine. So domestically, of course, this situation is quite clear. Although there are some challenges, there are a lot of challenges. You know, the Ukrainian economy will suffer, is suffering already, and will suffer a lot. I think minus 30% of GDP is the minimum of expectation. 30% of their GDP will decrease. While because of the of this war, Russian economy only probably 10%. That's why I'm appealing and I'm questioning any kind of business relations with Russia. Basically, our position is that Russia should be isolated, and that hopefully will make them to analyze properly and to think about the future. Was it really worth to start this war? I think that the Kremlin thoughts that they will disunite us, that they will find the world fragmented somehow, that every country will be rather egoistically concentrated on its own business and interests. And that's not the case within the EU and with the transatlantic community. There is no, of course, there is a discussion, as it is always among diplomats and politicians, but somehow we've managed to overcome this egoistic approach of finding only good opportunities to do business with Russia. I can imagine that also other even distant geographic partners could follow this path.
Thank you, Vice Minister. There are a number of questions from Facebook Live. I suspect there are students. Federico Segui is asking you if you think there is a room for a ceasefire agreement with Russia in a short time.
It's not a question to me, it's rather a question to the Kremlin, whether they want to stop their operation. But I can assure you, working also a bit, couple of years with foreign policy and especially Eastern policy, that any kind of attempt on our side of the Ukrainian, EU or transatlantic partners, any attempt to start or to ask Russia to start negotiations will be perceived by Moscow as a sign of weakness. They will perceive it as a sign that, okay, so the Ukraine is weak enough, and that's why they are asking for negotiations. The case with the Odessa port and the agreement under umbrella of UN shows that there is, for obvious reasons, a lack of trust. How can you start negotiations with a country which is one day signing an agreement and the next day breaking this and attacking the only port which is under control of Ukraine? And another argument why it's difficult to start negotiations and to keep the ceasefire, to start any kind of ceasefire. There was already a ceasefire in 2015-16 when the Minsk agreement was signed. German friends and French partners started to negotiate with Russia and Ukraine a kind of peaceful resolution of this conflict. And it seems that for Russia, it was just a kind of pause in their operation, that they've been waiting and preparing for the next phase of this operation. If the ultimate goal of the Kremlin is to take or to recreate the Soviet Union and to recreate the sphere of influence and to destroy the statehood of neighboring countries, there is really not that much room for negotiations, and there is not that really much room for diplomatic talks. But let's hope, of course, if Russia will be ready to stop killing people, we should, of course, analyze it carefully. But the very first decision should be for Russia to stop this operation and to take or to withdraw its troops from the territory of sovereign country.
Thank you very much. There are a couple of questions underscoring the importance of the young people and the women making part of the future peace process of peace processes, but also on the related to the refugees. What can be done since this crisis started from Latin America on the refugees, and if this is part of your trip to countries in Latin America to talk about the refugee situation?
Yeah.
And one other is it's a question that indicates if this war could create a different situations of breach of peace and security, for instance, in Taiwan, in North Korea, and the South Pacific, if this can spread the impact of in different parts of the world.
Thank you. Very good questions. First, about the refugees, what can be done on your side, on Latin American partners? We are not expecting that the refugees will be resettled from Poland to Latin America. Mostly because we believe that every person should take the decisions according to its own free will, whether he or she wants to leave Poland or not. We are not in a position to do it by force. We were opposing the quotas mechanism during the migration crisis in 2015, when there was a decision of the EU to do it by force, take migrants from the Mediterranean Sea and by force resettle them to other countries. This is not the way we as Christians should do. or even just as civilized people. So if any Ukrainian citizen wants to leave Poland and come to Mexico or I don't know, Costa Rica, and this country is ready to receive him, of course we have nothing against it, but there will be absolutely no that kind of mechanism. And the other thing is that the refugees, they don't want to leave Poland, first because they are doing quite fine in Poland, cultural proximity, language proximity. By the way, I don't know whether you know that, but the Ukrainian language is much more similar to Polish language than to Russian. It shows also somehow that we are quite close culturally, but they are doing quite well, and they want to be close to their own hosts, to their own country. That's why they don't want to leave. And just one additional argument, Russia has been saying constantly that it's liberating Ukraine from the Nazi government or something. So the question is, why those 7-8 million refugees are taking to the west, not to the east? Nobody is trying to cross the Russian border, being liberated. They are all very much afraid and fleeing Ukraine to Poland, Romania, Slovakia, etc. But what can be done by Latin American partners? Of course, any kind of financial or in-kind support. Those people, they do have needs. Of course, the first question they're asking when they cross the border: how can I find job? What can I do? I don't want to wait only for the social benefits. Nevertheless, of course, they need support, and we need also support, financial. Imagine that suddenly in a, I don't know, small town of Poland, 20,000 inhabitants, you have within a week 2,000 new kids you have to enroll to the schooling system, while the schools you are existing, the entire capacity for both was 1,000, for example, and suddenly you have additional 2,000 new students or pupils. So we need to build another additional infrastructure, hire teachers, etc., etc. The same with the healthcare system. Suddenly, you know, we are 15% bigger population. We don't know for how long, but those kids, they need to get education. Otherwise, it will be, you know, a lost year for them. So any kind of financial or in-kind support on your side, not only to the local authorities or NGOs. The NGOs in Poland, they can get a lot of grants from international organizations, but also to the central budget would be very much appreciated. We should not be let alone with this challenge. And the impact on other regions, the other question, I think that many countries and superpowers or powers, regional powers in Asia Pacific region are very carefully analyzing this, what has happened in Ukraine, and what is the response of the international community. And based on this lesson, they will or they will not take the decision with regards to their region. So as I told you at the beginning, it's not just a local conflict. It's not just a kind of European crisis. It is a invasion which will have a long-standing, long kind of effects and repercussions, and depends on our answer, on the international community answer. We will see what the future brings. That's why we are so actively responding to this crisis, to preserve the stability and peace. And standing behind or on the side will not bring us to the stability. We need to take an active position.
Well, thank you very much, Undersecretary, for this presentation. I think, as you mentioned, it's important to share accurate information. Now we have the Poland's viewpoint on this conflict in Europe and the need to be members of the international community and solidarize with them with different areas on the different impacts that this war is causing worldwide, as the Undersecretary has already pointed out. So thank you again for being
Thank you
here.
very much.
This is the exercises that we would like to have more, to share information, to exchange viewpoints between the members of the Mexican society, members of the different universities, and officials like you as Undersecretary for Foreign Affairs of Poland. And thank you. And,